So today we're going to be talking wheel tech things. Cue the intro. What's going on? I'm Scott from KONIG, and before we get into this little wheel tech topic video thing, click the subscribe button. It's all we ask you to do every single video. It would be greatly appreciated. It's red, it's down there, just, So whether you're new to wheels or you are a wheel seasoned veteran, well, if you're a wheel seasoned veteran, you probably could tune out. But if you're not, let me tell you 5 terms that you really need to know when we start talking about wheels. Why they're important, how they fall into your wheel decision. We're gonna talk about that all right now. So what are those 5 terms? Before we get started, they are offset, PCD, max load. We're gonna talk about backspacing. And the 5th one, if I could actually remember it,
centerboard.
Is centerboard.
Back, kids.
Now before we get started talking about these different terms, yes, I know for the most part this is pretty basic. However, knowing what these things are and how they apply to your car and how they apply to your wheel choice, that's really important. And that's why we want to go through them again. However, we have made great in-depth videos on pretty much every single one of these topics. So if you're looking for more of an in-depth look on any one of these pieces, make sure you're on the YouTube channel. Hopefully you're here right now. Subscribe, we've done that before, do it again, and then check out those videos. All right, so number 1 is offset. In fact, this is probably the number 1 viewed video on our YouTube channel. Essentially, offset is the distance that the mounting pad is offset from the center line of the wheel. Understanding the distance really is the whole key here. See, if you have an 8-inch wide wheel, the distance that that mounting pad is offset from the center line is gonna be how much that wheel moves this way or this way. If you're gonna be using a front wheel drive car, you may wanna have a higher offset, which will put the wheel more under your car. If you're gonna have a rear wheel drive car or something that's gonna take a much lower offset, has those big brakes, has the room to fit a lower offset wheel, you're gonna be looking for a lower number to push that wheel outside of the car. Now, offset has a lot to do with fitment and different things like that, but it can also mean the difference between your brakes fitting and not. And a wheel and tire professional near you can help you find the exact right option. All right, so let's move on to point number 2, that is backspace. Now, generally, I'll be honest with you, if you're running a car and not doing a truck or an off-road vehicle, backspace may not be the thing that you're most concerned with. However, let's talk about backspace real quick. Backspace is different than offset, and a lot of times people get this confused. Backspace is essentially the distance from the back of the mounting pad to the back of the wheel. Now, why is that important? Well, if you have an off-road vehicle or something that says you need to have a minimum backspace requirement, you need to make sure that that distance does not exceed it. In other words, you may have a vehicle situation that is calling for a wheel that has less than 3.5 inches of backspacing, meaning that if you end up getting a 5-inch backspace wheel, that baby's gonna crash. Anyhow, backspacing is also a measurement that you could use if you were trying to do some sort of custom setup on your vehicle and you wanted to know how much distance you could get away with between the suspension or an inner clipping point and the wheel. One last point you should note that's not really critical, but something worth noting is the fact that offset is always referred to in millimeters, and backspacing is almost always referred to in inches. So when we start talking about wheel terminology, the most important term that you're probably going to talk about today that affects your life is PCD, and that is pitch circle diameter. Pitch circle diameter is also often called by bolt pattern. That's right. So why is it important for you? Why do you need to make sure that you know exactly what PCD your wheel is and what PCD is set up for your vehicle? Well, here's why. If you buy a wheel that doesn't have the same PCD as your car, it won't go on. That seems like reason enough. I don't think we have to go any further. All right, so PCD, what is PCD? Essentially, you've heard of it in 2 different ways. For the American guys or for a lot of the off-road guys, you've heard of it used in the standard way, 5 by 4.5. Or if you're a metric or you're looking to a lot of popular passenger cars, you're gonna be referring to it as 5 by 114.3. So what does that mean? Well, pitch circle diameter bolt pattern is essentially the distance of spread throughout that bolt pattern range. What does that mean is, so let's say this is a 5, 4.5, the circle that goes around, that goes through the center of all your bolt holes. 5 and 120 would be bigger, meaning the spread would be larger. So that's how patterns work. 5 and 100 is small, 5 and 120 is much bigger. And so essentially, PCD is just the distance that circle goes throughout the center of each hole. So another important term that you should know is center bore. So center bore is pretty simple. It's essentially the hole that's in the back of a wheel that allows the wheel to sit on the lip of the hub of your car. Now, you have to understand that when we start talking about aftermarket wheels versus OE wheels, your OE wheel, the wheel that came on your car, will be hub-centric, meaning that the bore size of that wheel will be the same as the hub size of your car. On an aftermarket wheel, because of the fact that we use the wheel for multiple applications that will have different hub sizes, that hole is usually larger. For us, for the most part, it's gonna be like a 73.1. Some people use 74.1. What do you do to make sure that you get it hub-centric, that you get it perfectly centric to the hub of your car, that it's not going to be off-centered in either way? That's where hub rings come in. We've done videos on this already, but the important thing you need to know about hub centricity is really simple. The hub ring that you're going to purchase is really going to be used in an aftermarket application. This is so that we can get that center bore of the wheel sized correctly for the hub size of your car. So essentially what happens is this hub-centric ring, it goes into the back of the wheel, it brings the center bore size on an aftermarket wheel down to the correct size of the hub of your car. You put it on, now the wheel is perfectly centered. And when it's perfectly centered, that wheel is gonna run true. It's not gonna travel out of order in an elliptical shape, won't be going in the wrong way longitudinally, and what's gonna essentially allow this wheel to do is roll perfectly straight without any deviation down the road and reduce vibration. If you really want to, and you know what sizes you need, you can go right to store.konigwheels.com and you can pick yourself up a set right now. So one of the questions that we get asked the most is, why doesn't Konig, or why doesn't one of these aftermarket wheel manufacturers just make the wheel hub-centric? Why don't you just drill it the same as my car? Well, here's the thing. We make wheels that are in bolt patterns and PCDs and offset ranges, but if we were gonna try to make every single one of those wheels perfectly hub-centric to all the different hub sizes that are out there, there would be a lot of part numbers. We make one bore size on a given wheel, and we use hub rings to then be able to perfectly make that wheel hub-centric to your vehicle without having any of the hassle. Moving on to our final point, this is incredibly important. It's probably more important than it gets any credit for, and that is load rating. Why is load rating important? Because load rating is actually how much weight, static weight, each wheel can hold per corner. Your vehicle has a given weight, and a wheel has a given load rating. And if you exceed one or the other, you could be in a lot of trouble. Now, a wheel needs to exceed the load rating of your vehicle, and if you can't do that, you could have some catastrophic failures, especially as the wheel incurs, some impact damage or anything like that. How do you find the load that you need for your vehicle? Well, here's the deal. It's not the vehicle weight divided by 4. It's actually the heaviest axle weight divided by 2. You can find all this on the placard of your door, and if you look, most of the time they're even divided into front and rear axles. So just take that weight, divide by 2. The heaviest one is what you're going to use to make sure that the wheel that you choose exceeds that number. And don't get me wrong, we appreciate the fact that everybody wants to run our wheels, right? Like if you're watching this video, it's clear that you want to run our stuff too. But with that said, you need to make sure that your vehicle is properly load rated for our wheels. But what I will suggest is this. If you put an elephant on a thick concrete pad, but then take that same elephant and move it over and put it on a very thin wood deck, which one's gonna hold up better? One has a different load capacity. It's just the way it works.
That's just the way it is.
So thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. We like when you watch these things. We also like when you subscribe and click the like button so you can do those as well. But that's it for this one. We will catch you on the next one.